Charlotte, your movie opens with a picture projected on a screen, and this kind of shots repeats many times during the movie. I would like to know, why did you choose this approach?
I think the film is in many ways an expression of memory, and cameras and points of view are a really integral part of that, and the idea of having the young girl, Sophie, as an adult, look back in this moment using this footage that was captured at the time as these kind of anchors to remember around, felt important and interesting, and a way to kind of bring the audience into that experience of hers of remembering this last holiday with her dad.
And how did you work visually on the movie? Because there are many details, many close-up, and for example, Paul Mescal character is often filmed from behind.
Yeah.
I would like to know, why did you choose this approach to shoot the movie?
Yeah, my cinematographer is one of my closest creative collaborators, and we spent a lot of time establishing for ourselves the visual, or our intended visual language for the film. And in the conversations that we had, we established that Sophie, as an adult, is the overarching point of view, the kind of master point of view. And beneath that, you have these other points of view. So you have, for example, Sophie as a child forming memories and having very direct points of view of details. And that is, for example, a hand over a sunbed, or a football earring in somebody's ear, or her father's eye through glass. And then you have these scenes of Callum alone, which are in some sense imaginings of what he may have been doing beyond her eye. And it felt important to communicate that that point of view of adult Sophie imagining or recreating these moments, to keep him at arm's length, because ultimately this is about the fact that he is unknowable. She cannot fully understand him, and so we would shoot him from behind or through mirrors or in reflections to obstruct him fully from view.
In the movie there are a bunch of songs from the 90s, because of course the movie is set in the 90s, and I would like to know, how did you choose them, especially Tender by Blur, because that song starts in a way and ends in another, in a more spectral way, and of course it reflects the main character struggle. But I would like to know, how did you choose these songs?
That's a really interesting description of the trajectory of that song, because I think it's true of various musical moments in the film, that they begin as one thing and end as another. I can think of at least 4 off the top of my head. Tender was one of the few songs that was written into the script, that I had some sense. It wasn't always in the script, but certainly before we ever got to Turkey, it was in the script, and I had this idea of including it. That being said, I think I was more conscious of the front half of that song than I was of the back half, and what follows in that sequence was refined in the edit. And I think that the back half of that song is really what justifies its place in the film. So it's interesting. I don't know how much of that was in the back of my mind, how much of that I subconsciously understood. I think many of those moments in the film were discoveries, where the song evolves and so does the image, and music is such an important part of the film. Perhaps we were cutting to that in some way, and so each informs the other.
I really appreciate the fatherhood portrait of this man that tried his best to be a good dad, and I think that it's quite unusual in cinema, and I would like to know how important it was for you to describe this man as a father in this perspective.
Yeah, it was really important. I think it was inspired by my relationship to my dad, and a result in some sense of not feeling like I had seen that very often portrayed in that way. And as I built out the character and tried to understand for myself who these 2 people were, I realized that Callum is best at being a father. He's better at being a father than just about anything else in his life, and he feels a sense of purpose in that and a strength in that. And I think both of them learn from each other and reflect each other in certain ways and bring out the best in each other. And it was essential that be a very warm and loving relationship.
Paul Mescal interpretation, I think it's really powerful, and I think that his character's struggle emerges little by little during the movie. I would like to know, how did you work with him, because it's a really soft transition, isn't that drastic, and I would like to know how did you work with him?
I think we put a lot of trust in each other. I gave him a overview of my understanding of the character, of his backstory, of his present struggle, of where I saw him going, and I allowed Paul to build on that in whatever way he needed to access the character and portray the character effectively and feel empathy for the character ultimately. And I think he trusted me in knowing where the script was going and how we would cut and how we would be in control, I think, of the gradual unveiling of Callum's struggle over the course of the film, and allow it to be a surprise in some sense that we didn't see coming.
Your movie also underlines the constant reinvention of memory, and I would like to know if this movie helped you to rethink or reimagine your childhood in some sort of way.
I don't know that I reimagined it, but I certainly revisited it and allowed those recollections to inform the script and to be a big part of that first outline and focus on what moments I was interested in recreating and portraying, and I found a lot of joy in that process.
Frankie and Paul's relationship was essential to the success of the movie. How did they bond?
Very well, and over 2 weeks leading up to production, I spent a couple of hours with them at most every day, working through the script or tangentially through the script around scenes. But mostly in those 2 weeks, what was important was them getting to know each other and building a connection and a bond. Fortunately, they enjoy each other and really grew to love each other, I think, and now have this very unique shared experience. And there were certain scenes that we probably couldn't have shot earlier on, even just the scene where they arrive from the airport to the hotel, and she's kind of resting on his lap, and in the script that was written as his hand resting on her with effortless intimacy, and that's a very easy thing to write, and it's a very hard thing to capture authentically. And it was one of the last things we shot, and I remember Paul saying to me, I don't think we could have done this in the first week. And so while those 2 weeks at the beginning were really important in establishing a bond between them, it grew. We shot for 6 weeks beyond that, and by the end they really were very close.
This movie is also produced by Barry Jenkins. I would like to know which was his creative contribution to the project.
Yeah, he became more involved during post-production when he would watch cuts. He'd give feedback and just be there as a guide and as a support. And as the film screened for the first time and has moved forward on this path, he's just been there as a resource and a huge advocate for the film, kind of coming out in front of it and introducing it at festivals. He's a very hard person to speak after because he speaks so easily and so passionately and animatedly. But he's an amazing person and producer and, of course, filmmaker to have in my corner and representing the film.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.